So was biohacking a fad? That's the question at hand. We're going to get into it. I'm going to give you, I think, a very unique perspective, given that I actually put together, owned, ran a clinic for over 5 years, full of the absolute top-notch, best equipment. I think the greatest collection of that equipment, I often said, anywhere in the world. And I don't know that that could be refuted, but especially once you see everything that was in the clinic, I feel comfortable in saying that. But I'm going to give you that perspective. Was it a fad? Were there vestiges of it that will withstand the test of time? We're going to get into that. We're going to handle all of it piece by piece in some way or another. So let's look at it. And subscribe to HealthMaxAbroad. It helps out a lot. This is kind of the newest, healthiest iteration you'll see after I show you what went on with the clinic. But let me start off. I'm just going to give you a little perspective on my background, where I came from, how things came to be with this biohacking clinic. I'd really always had, since I was a kid, interest in health. And I think about back then, you thought you were taking a big step. I remember as a kid, if you weren't drinking Coca-Cola, that was really a healthy person. And looking back, it's hard to imagine that people still drink Coca-Cola, I'm sure. But now you think about it, you're so much more Spartan and regimented as you gain more knowledge over the years and you get more sort of adept at turning things down that aren't good for your health. But I always had this fascination with health, biohacking. And that's always been a bit of a Achilles heel. I think of biohacking is the term. A lot of people I don't think are that comfortable with that term. It seems maybe a bit crude, but yeah, to me it doesn't fit. I'm surprised something better hasn't come up as a descriptor of just health maxing. Actually, it doesn't seem to be off-putting as much as biohacking. So people have always had a bit of a problem with that term. Anyway, as an aside, that is. But so I had this fascination. I was actually in Texas, and I decided I want to get into this biohacking space. A friend of mine, we were going to open a place in Dallas, Texas, and we went through all the paces and sort of looked at different places, what it was going to take to do it. And my friend just ultimately wasn't ready to totally commit 100% to it. So he dropped out. We're still good friends today, actually. And another good friend of mine who was actually in Carlsbad, California, told me, and I told him I was thinking about doing this sort of clinic. He said, you need to come out here to Carlsbad. There's so many athletes out here. People are much more progressive about their health. I think it's just a better situation. I went out there, looked at it, he showed me around. I said, yeah, I think you're right. So moved out there to California, to Carlsbad, North County, San Diego there. And he was right. It was really ripe for this type of place. There wasn't anything like it. There was, of course, the one place in LA, and they had some things there and they had some recognition. But this was going to be, as I said, just an advance in terms of the amount of equipment. And ultimately it was going to be, I think, the biggest play in this space that the space had ever seen. I think I could still say that, and I'll show you. But I went out there and just sort of looked around a bit, and I was basically putting all my chips in the middle of the table. I was going all in.
I'm shoving my chips to the middle of the table. I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, can get out. Okay? This team is going to the playoffs.
I was using all my retirement money. It was just me funding it alone. Didn't have anyone else in, so it was all sort of on my shoulders. But I did meet a guy who had kind of been in biohacking himself.
First ever ARX.
ARX's first escalator move. What could possibly go wrong?
But he was going to help me out. Just a guy who could be sort of a right-hand. I was looking for a right-hand person, man, woman. But he was a younger guy, so he jumped on board. And then my buddy, who's really a big handyman, he's really, really great with his hands for anything. But so he helped me just sort of get the place. Of course, when you get the space together, initially they give you what they call the TI, the tenant improvements. You get a certain amount of money to improve the space. But I found a space in this really nice upscale shopping center, but they didn't have anything really on the first level. The only thing was on the second level. That really was all I could afford anyway. It's some pretty pricey real estate there, pricey rents. So you get up on the second floor and you're sort of relegated to the second floor in a way. There's no traffic up there. There was a bathroom up there people would oftentimes frequent from the lower level. And there was a yoga studio next door. And actually at the other end on the second floor a little bit down, there was the guy actually started Ashtanga yoga. And so there were 2 yoga places up there, but then the Ashtanga guy, as the word was, he had a stroke while he was riding a bicycle. So he was not doing well. Ultimately that Ashtanga place shut down, but there wasn't really much of anything else up there. There was an eye doctor and maybe a hair salon at one time. And there was one hair salon that closed down. There was another one. So there wasn't a lot of traffic up there, but we sort of set out. It was kind of a funky shaped space there. It was only about 1,500 square feet. So we had to try to make it work. For instance, there was a drop ceiling like you have in a typical office. And I looked at a couple of contractors to come in and take the ceiling out and just make it look better, paint the ceiling, make the ceilings much higher. But what they were quoting was pretty much gonna use up all the DI money that I had. So my buddy and I, who's the really, really strong handyman, he's also an artist, as I'll show you. But we ended up just taking out that whole ceiling in one night, just taking out all that, I forget what you call that, that type of material that lines the ceilings up there, but just sort of stripping it out. I mean, now I can say it, but it was, there was no attention to code whatsoever. There were sprinklers hanging down still, but luckily somehow I made it over 5 years there without incident. But so we took that ceiling out and then we just sort of redid everything. We worked with sort of the existing space that we had. I'll show you here, but we ended up building something that worked out pretty well. It kind of fit the equipment pretty well. You see there was this really funky sort of nook in the back. Couldn't figure out what to do with that. And then we ended up getting a sauna there, infrared sauna, and it just sort of perfectly fit into that nook. And it happened with a couple of things. The cryo machine was this massive monstrosity, but it fit perfectly into this front room. You see there with the cold. And so things sort of fit together. They started locking in and things went pretty well for a while. Then the whole COVID debacle hit. Maybe, I forget exactly how long I'd been open, maybe a little over a year. So things are just sort of getting up and running, and things always sort of seem to sort of track at a nice level throughout all the entire 5 years. And the fact the 5th year I was making the best in terms of revenue ever. But I'll get into that and why I ultimately shut it down. But even through the COVID, we kind of made the best of it, had to sort of turn it into a speakeasy of sorts. Luckily there was a back door, people could come in the back door, kind of had to shutter up the front of the place. You can see there, all that paper was just on the front to make it look like nothing was going on in there. And so everything actually worked out all right through that. And it was a bit of a tough time, but things worked out. And then, so in the end, what basically happened was, as I said, the months were going better and better, and they got, at the end, I had the best months, the highest months. But I kind of ventured into another area and things, I had paid off a lot of the equipment within about 3 years. And so I did have my cash flow was better. And then I sort of went to another area that I thought would make things even more breadth of concept, even more breadth of choices for people. And one of them was a laser. And this company had sold me a couple of other devices that were in this same sort of niche. But this laser, they said, we're going to get this laser in for you. It's called a soprano titanium, top of the line laser. And you're going to have people coming in, and mainly it's for hair removal, laser hair removal. But they did have other uses as well. But they were going to help. They talked a big game about we're going to help you. We're going to help get this place stacked for this machine. But they neglected to tell me, and it wasn't an accident, but they neglected to tell me that you need, in the state of California, you need a medical director, an MD, to serve as the medical director, someone you have to pay a pretty hefty sum. And then you're going to need an RN to actually run the thing. Well, I didn't have either one of those things. And as I'll explain in a minute, I was just so thin across everything else that I was having to do to keep the clinic going in a way that I wanted to keep going, that's really what ultimately sort of ended things. Is I got to a situation where a person from that company came out to train and said, well, you don't have these. You have the RN, you have the medical director. We really can't even use this piece of equipment. Very expensive piece of equipment. It's in the 6 figures. And so that was kind of ultimately gave me the opportunity, because I I'd really gotten to a point where I was completely really stressed out, really burning the candle on both ends. I was working there 12 plus hours every day, 6 days a week. And as anyone knows, has had their own business, it's just difficult to sort of delegate to people when you don't trust that they're going to do it as well as you're going to do it. And that's what ended up happening. Is I had a number of people that were there for a while, but I never could really ultimately trust them to marshal things, and I couldn't even leave the place. It ultimately ended up where I had to just be there all the time. I couldn't even go out and take a walk. I'd go out and try to take a walk for a minute. I'd get a call. You need to come back here. So it's kind of a curse. It's kind of a good problem to have when you get busy and you have a lot of clients. Of course, over 5 years, the customer base grows a lot, and you just can't step away. And another thing I was doing that made it even more of an issue is maybe toward the first year or two, maybe at the end of the first year, I'd been working. I also do a therapy called muscle activation technique, and there's 3 levels to it, and I wanted to I saw a lot of value in getting to the top level, to being the most advanced of a RX. It's called an RX practitioner, MAT RX. So I'm doing that while I'm still trying to get the clinic going, and you have to go to Denver about every 6 weeks for 3.5 days. So I'm doing that in the process of doing this, and made it through that. And maybe say a little over a year and a half in, I'm doing the MAT with people, with clients, and each of these sessions is about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, where you're working on someone hands-on. And basically the therapy is you test all the muscles in the body, and then you find the ones that aren't firing like they should, that are weak when they get tested. You put the muscle into a shortened position, and then you test the strength of it. And then after, let's say a muscle's weak, it's not firing correctly, then you treat the muscle where the attachment sites are. That's where all the mechanoreceptors are. And then it sort of, your brain sort of reconnects to that muscle. You'll retest, it'll test back strong. So it gives people great feedback immediately. They almost feel like, this is magic. What are we doing here? Like almost a sleight of hand type of practice I was engaging in. But you're going to get that kind of great feedback. And what I'm saying with that is, as I started doing more and more MAT, I started getting more people wanting to do MAT. And before I know it, I'm agreeing to do it. I kind of wanted to limit it at first, but I might be doing 6, and some days 6 or 7, these MAT sessions, while I'm trying to also, for a good portion of that time, sort of run the clinic. So you might have someone, say, in the hyperbaric chamber. I've got to keep an eye on that. I got to get them in there. I got to monitor them a little bit. And then of course, I'm going to get them out, and then maybe someone's on the PMF machine, which I'll talk about these machines, but maybe you need to switch them out every 10 minutes. Maybe they've got the sandwich piece on. They want to put the rings on. So you put the rings, or little rings you put around maybe an elbow joint or the wrist or something. Maybe you got an injury, or you like to use on your head even. So you have to come over there and help people with that. After a while, people get more self-reliant. They learn how to sort of use the machines themselves, but there's a bit of a training that goes along with that. But I'm just saying that to say how much I'm being pulled in all different directions. And then there's also, I'd brought in a good friend of mine. She'd come in about 1.5 years, maybe close to 2 years in, but she was a chiropractor. She's also a functional neurologist, really intelligent, really smart, really a quick girl, but she was really great. But she had a lot of patients coming in and out, and I had to kind of, in some ways, I'd have to help them while she was maybe with someone else and processing someone else. And she did a little bit of straight chiropractic, but now she was pretty much working with everyone in the brain function. They're coming in with a lot of brain cases that were really difficult to be treated. But all this is going on, and I've got to be able to manage all this. I'm working all the time. So I'm really just getting to my wit's end. The health is going down, which is kind of a strange thing to say. I'm in the place with the most advanced health enhancing equipment anywhere, but I don't have time to get to it. Now, some of the time I do, and I will say when I did, it did help me to be able to carry on this schedule, to be able to make it through it, to keep me from completely burning out. But at the same time, I'm just too stressed. And you got the business end of it. In California, you might get a couple times I got a new bill in the mail, a tax bill. A couple times, one was from the county assessor, where I'd had all this equipment, this really high priced equipment, and all of a sudden they want an accounting of all the equipment, and they're going to, of course, tax the value of that equipment. So this is the kind of thing that it really just drove me insane. If it was just about, in a lot of cases, just helping people better health, then I'm all about it. But when you start throwing in the business part of it, as you know, with any business too, you got 98% of the people are great, but you might have that 2% that really just wears you down, and they require a lot more attention and effort to get through. So you had the 2% factor, you got the business factor, you got the taxes, you got all the high costs in California, and the fact that I'm just trying to manage things on my own and I can't leave things. So after 5 years of that, I really was just ready to pack it in, and that's kind of how it kind of worked out with the laser thing, as I get back to that. But I had looked into getting an attorney with this laser issue, and basically the attorney, who was had a really great reputation and well known in that area, but he said basically that you're up against a big company here, and they can take you out on this. They can extend this for an indefinite amount of time, and they can just drain you. And so he basically recommended not to sue, not to take action. Basically, you're a small fish up against a big, huge mountain of a fish, or a whale fish, or the biggest fish in the ocean. So it was kind of an opportunity. I always want to also kind of leave the country, get out of the country, get out of the U.S., get out of the matrix. I was sort of just, I've been compressed for 5+ years there. So that was my opportunity. I took it, and it's the channel here. We're now with HealthMaxAbroad. That's kind of a lot of the backing behind it, a lot of the reasoning. But I'm doing it kind of from a different angle now. My health is I feel better now. I feel I'm getting so much leaner, in fact. That's one way I measure how well I'm doing is, at that time, I mentioned before, when I was at the BioHacking Clinic, one of the machines I had, of course, we had to measure your body fat among other things, but I was scared to get on that thing because I knew I was going up. My body fat was just stressed, and I look back at some of these pictures and I'm looking pudgy and really not looking good, looking a little bit inflamed, but I feel like, I'm older now, but feel much better, feel really great. And so that's part of the reasoning and the effort I'm gonna do with this channel, is try to bring that to anyone watching. And I will, in fact, I offer the service where I'll come to someone, or we can talk or do a session, but that's kind of what I want to do now. But that's a lot of the background. That's how things came to be. And I'm going to go with some of these pieces of equipment and just go through them and sort of offer a bit of a explanation, and then get to this biohacking, a fad, and what will endure, and what of it was ultimately just a fad. But when I think back to that equipment, you look like the cryotherapy chamber, and I think I can lump everything into one sort of category where, and I think about this with regard to anything else really, when you try to isolate something in the body out of nature, oftentimes you don't have the other cofactors, you don't have the other factors that really improve that performance, or the sort of factor into how well you're going to receive what's being given to you in isolation. So for instance, if you go out in the sun and the estimates are, I've seen reports of it's 50+ metabolites of vitamin D. When the sun hits your skin, it's sulfated. I've seen up to 130+ vitamin D metabolites that are sulfated in your skin after the sun hits your dermis there. So say taking a vitamin D pill, vitamin D3, that's not going to obviously duplicate what you're going to get from the sun. So that's kind of the way I look at a lot of this biohacking equipment. When you try to, and most of it is an attempt to sort of isolate something you get from nature. Take the Pulse Center PMF machine. I love this machine. Used to use it, if I could, I'd use it every day if I got to it. But it's basically charging all the cells in your body electrically. And it's sort of isolating what you get when you go out and you walk, you ground, you walk barefoot on the beach, in the ocean, or you walk along the edge of the ocean there on the beach. It's basically giving you that, and it's trying to mimic that in a way. But when you do, the interesting thing about the PMF is where your body's lacking energy is where you feel the PMF working. You feel it filling up a space. Maybe you've had a shoulder, maybe something you haven't even thought about, you had from years ago. Maybe you had a shoulder injury, neck injury. Boom, it just goes right to that spot, and you don't feel it anywhere else if you're just lying on the bed part of it. And so that to me was that's some really good feedback to get again and again. And then it starts to go away as something starts to fill up with energy. Then it goes to another spot in your body that may need the energy. So the PMF, I do find value in it, but at the same time, as I said, you're going to get that in nature. You can maybe get it in a way that's not isolated away from other factors that make it even more beneficial, that there's a real additive component to it. And I believe there is completely. And then take the shockwave machine. So I had a machine, a soft wave machine. It's a shockwave device. Now, I saw it do some really interesting, really great things for people with injuries. But I would say some of the claims maybe are a bit too high for what the actual results might end up garnering. So I think in the shockwaves case, it's another example of, although I don't know anything in nature is going to give you a shockwave like this, it's basically creating a little micro trauma, and then your body rushes the stem cells and other factors in there. They're going to bring about healing. But that's one I'm going to get to in just a minute, a little bit further. But when you look at red light, in fact, I think about red light. I think red light, it has a lot of great studies there. A lot of the studies are really positive, beneficial, but again, you're isolating three waves there. And what you're getting near, mid, far infrared, when I can just go in the sun, I get all the infrared. I get every single wave there. I get full spectrum. I'm getting everything. So, and you can't tell me that there's not a way in which the red doesn't work with the other lights within the spectrum to create an even more additive effect. So you're just isolating out these, whichever one you're looking at, near, mid, far infrared. Not that there aren't benefits to that, not that there aren't documented benefits to it, but again, I think just going in the sun, being in the sun, or being around the sun, you can be in the shade if you're still getting that full spectrum light and you're surrounded by that full spectrum light. You get out of the house, you're going to garner a lot of those benefits as well. And then let's take the ARX machines. The ARX machines, what a great concept. Really the magic of it is the eccentric stimulus. So you're getting all those different effects you get with loading up a bar, which is not really practical in the gym, and holding it for a split second. But you're getting it here throughout the entire range of motion. The concept makes a ton of sense. It's a progressive overload, sort of on steroids, so to speak, exponentially. But I'm a real big believer in progressive overload. Like, you have to, especially doing the MAT practice that I did for so long, the muscles are so key and really anti-aging, that you have to keep the brain connected to every part of the body. And that's, of course, the aim of MAT. But with the ARX machines, you're taking the muscle, of course, you're taking it beyond failure, sort of eccentric failure, basically. And that's where you're going to get the most gains in strength, testosterone. And I mean, that's proven as well, that the eccentric part of the repetition is the most. And the eccentric is basically the lengthening of the muscle. Or if you're on a bench press and you're bringing it down, that's the eccentric. And you can hold much more weight. You're much stronger in the eccentric than the concentric part of the repetition. And so overloading that eccentric part of the repetition, it does make a lot of sense. But over time, and I used these machines, I had 2 ARX machines, and that pretty much accounted for any sort of exercise you're going to do, upper body, lower body. But I can say over time, with anything, I think there's a dose dependence. Yes, you do get stronger. Yes, it's very quantifiable, which is a great part of it, is that you see how much stronger you're getting each time, each workout, and you're able to track it and see if you're getting stronger more so in the eccentric, concentric. You can kind of break it out. But yeah, I think there is some value there in the ARX machine as sort of an additive. I'm a big believer in sort of the Bulgarian theory of weightlifting, that the Bulgarians for so long were way behind the Russians, and they sort of adjusted their periodization, as it's known. But they sort of found that if you focus on, say, power for a block, a 4 to 6 week block, that I think that's sort of the range where your brain starts to adapt more, as after 4 to 6 weeks of a new workout. And then you go to more sort of speed with your workout, more focus on speed, from power to speed, although speed is a function, a part of power. But Then you go to just straight strength for another block. So you periodize, you mix these blocks, and there's a lot of experimentation involved as well, but that did push the Bulgarian. So I think what I'm saying is with the ARX, there's a place you could use it, you could block it, you could periodize with it, and it'd be very effective in that regard, but I don't think you're gonna wanna, you kind of get blown out doing this over and over again. It's just the only workout you're doing. So you need some, not only variety for the brain, I think, you need some novel, new stimulus all the time, but so I think it has a place. I'm gonna say that about the ARX machines. It has a place, but again, it's a very expensive machine, and I had many issues with just keeping it running. So there are a lot of moving parts to those machines. But another one that's a bit controversial is the hyperbaric chamber, because there are some who believe that if you don't, and this gets a little bit more nuanced here, but if you don't carry enough net negative charge and stuff, and redox in your cells, maybe you can't handle a lot of excess oxygen. Maybe those turn into an oxygen that's not beneficial for you. And I've seen a few people, especially, I wouldn't say not necessarily that I know of when I had the clinic, that had a problem, but I do know a couple of girls actually that had, somehow they feel like the hyperbaric chamber triggered some autoimmunity in them. Maybe something that was dormant that came to life. I knew a girl from Bali that happened, where she went to I think she tried to get 25 to 30 hours in the hyperbaric chamber. They used to say you want to get 40 hours in there. But yeah, and then now she's saddled with this autoimmunity that she's battling. But it's nuanced. You can't really, it's something you can try to track. That's more difficult to track in a lot of cases, or more difficult to know how someone's ultimately going to react. But that gets me to another thing we would use pretty extensively. We had several different pieces of equipment that would really quantify, that would measure how well you're doing, give you that feedback. And one was the InBody 770, and it was the top of the line InBody machine. Of course, it gave you your body fat, your skeletal muscle. It gave you an inflammation number, which was a bit difficult to ferret out. Is that inflammation from workout, is sort of systemic inflammation? But the big number I thought was really useful, really helpful, is your phase angle. Muscle mass number. Hers is, she has 50.5 pounds of skeletal muscle. That's muscle attached to bone. So if we can raise that, that's going to help her basal metabolic rate. And then another key figure we look at down here is extracellular water to total body water. So the range on this is 0.36 to 0.38. So as you can see here, she's above, and then that's broken out segmentally here. And you can tell exactly within your different segments how much inflammation you have. For her, she does have quite a bit of inflammation in her trunk. And then there comparatively, her left leg to her right leg, a bit more inflammation going on there, which makes sense to her based on a few things that have happened with her left leg. And then these numbers below, all of these indicate how well each one of these segments functionally supports your body weight. And each of these numbers should be at least 100. So you can see for her, she has pretty good strength in her arms, good strength in the trunk. She needs to get the leg strength up. And so with phase angle, I really think it's a very useful measure. It has a lot of clinical significance, in fact, but it's really, by proxy, it's a measure of your mitochondrial health. So the mitochondria, they make water, metabolic water for your cells. And what this bioimpedance device is doing, the InBody 770, it's saying this alternating AC current to your body, sort of measuring how much resistance it's receiving from cell walls, from all your cells. And the mitochondria in there making the water. So the more water inside the cell, the better the cell membrane capacitance, or the better, what's the word? It's a net negative charge you're looking for within the cell. There's more redox, but you want, it's measuring the cell membrane integrity, so to speak. So if you have a really strong intact cell membrane, you have a strong, healthy cell where the mitochondria are producing a lot of water, sort of like a water balloon. It's filled up with water. So that cell membrane has a lot of cross-membrane potential. So it's got this sodium-potassium exchange happening between the intracellular, extracellular water. And so the phase angle is basically sending this electrical signal, and then it's measuring the amount of time that it takes that signal to reverberate, to return, to revolve. But the higher the phase angle, the stronger the cell membrane integrity, the stronger your mitochondria. And so it's a very useful measure. You've got, in a lot of cases, I ran into some people with some very low phase angles, and they ended up having very, very serious medical conditions. And then I ran into a few guys that had enormous phase angles, and they were your top athletes. They were your professional athletes. It was always, the correlation was pretty hard to deny in all cases, but so it's always a useful measure. I thought it was one of those useful markers we had within the whole clinic, but in a lot of cases, it's hard to sort of quantify what you're doing with the phase angle doesn't always indicate that for whatever reason. There might be someone could feel a lot better, say they use the PMF machine, or they're feeling remarkably better. It's quantifiable for them. Maybe there's some placebo effect involved, which we know is obviously very powerful, but it didn't always translate into phase angle improvements. So maybe it takes longer for those sort of changes to evolve over time. But as I said, we were looking at those changes. Some cases, people were there for 5 years. So they didn't get much bump or movement in their phasing. So it's another sort of example of things that are going to have to evolve throughout biohacking. I think we're going to make some improvements, but sort of learning how to take some of the information and get better application from it, I think, is ultimately we're going to end up going. But hopefully that phase angle example makes sense. I know it's a bit tricky, it's a bit complex, it's a bit nuanced, but you can just think of it in terms, ultimately, like I said, it's an indirect proxy for your metabolic health, which we know is, and your mitochondrial health, which your mitochondria, that's your health in a nutshell. Those are the energy making powerhouses within each cell that you have, and they're making water for the cell. So they're keeping the cell hydrated, they're keeping that capacity, those capacitors within the cell walls working, and we're keeping that exchange moving. So yeah, that was one of the biggest markers we had. And I mentioned too, I said that, but that was one great thing about being in the clinic, was that I did get to see a lot of top, but anyone from any walk of life was getting a lot of value from what we were doing in general. But we saw a lot of top athletes, a lot of top boxers, for whatever reason. A lot of MMA guys were in town, and Canelo Alvarez you see the picture there with him, but he was one of the biggest names that would come in quite regularly. And he referred in other guys. His cousin, in fact, Oscar Valdez, who was once the lightweight champ, he would come in a lot, and other boxers from his training camp or his gym would come in. But we had a few NBA guys, one NFL guy I can think of, a lot of tennis guys, two professional tennis players, but a lot of college tennis guys. And of course, I have a love for tennis. That's something that was just easy for me to talk to them about, make sense in some fashion for them. But so got to work with a lot of skateboarders, of course, out there, triathletes. So got a lot of great experience and a lot of good feedback, and really helped me to grow, I think, just in terms of the space by having exposure to all those guys, having that brick and mortar building. But getting back to the markers, we had the functional neurologist, she had another machine that would actually measure your sort of nervous system health. It was really sort of advanced way to measure the overall health and state of your nervous system. So that was also helpful for us as well, especially if someone had been stressed and really been beset by stress. So a lot of the tools there were really, a lot of them were just getting developed and sort of in the infancy stages, but I think there's a lot of development that's going to come throughout, and things are going to pick up. And as I mentioned, I'll go through, I think I hit a lot of the pieces. And there was the CVAC machine, of course, this machine that looks like a spaceship, something out of the Jetsons. And forgive me, this is just kind of a stream of consciousness sort of video I'm doing, as I'm just sort of recalling everything that went on there. But it was
the CVAC pod. We're about to undergo a pretty big pressure change here. You can see on the screen from about...
I feel like there are a lot of health benefits in doing that, but that was a bit more difficult to quantify, I think, the CVAC, than a lot of things. Now there were a few people that went and got extensive labs, if you want to pay attention to labs, and they did have some improvement. And one thing they did tout, the CVAC people, was improvement in your natural killer cell populations or your immune system function. And there were some people that had some good results there, but it's a very expensive machine, and it can be a bit difficult to, you get to where you really like the feeling, where your ears are popping all the time. You feel like you're literally going up, and it's literally what it's doing, is taking you up. Say, I think this machine went all the way up to about 17,000 feet in altitude, replicated 17,000 feet or pseudo 17,000, but you literally felt like you were really going way up in the mountains, and you go up and you could see it on the screen. You go up and down, and it was that variation that created this sort of pumping effect throughout your whole body, just cleaning out any waste. They think even in your lymphatic system, in your brain. So there's a lot of theory that sounds really, really great, and in practice sometimes you do see some people, but it's very much sort of person to person, especially with a machine like that. There's such a niche there. But guys, especially the boxers, they even got they felt like some good effects. The MMA guys, they were guys that had concussions. They felt like a lot of the data was compelling, and they felt like they did feel better from CVAC. And I had a lot of guys use it extensively, and they started to swear by it. But for some guys, like I say, it was so person to person. One machine may work great for one guy, another one may work great for another guy, and another girl, you just don't know. But when you break it down, you look at all the data on it, it's even difficult to sort of quantify in a lot of cases what's really working. And sometimes when you have this many machines we had in one place, you do get to say, well, what exactly, if I did get a good result or outcome, what was that attributed to? Was it more this machine, that machine? So it just comes down to kind of basically how you feel in a lot of cases. I mean, that ultimately you can wear any tracking device, a Whoop, or whatever you're wearing, and I got away from wearing those because, for one thing, I'd started to feel a little bit of pressure with my sleep. My sleep was really suffering back then, and people would come in and kind of give me a lot of different things. I wore a glucose monitor for a while. Someone brought one of those in for me to try out, where they bring in different devices. With the Oura Ring, had an Oura Ring for a while, and you get some value there. But I just got a little bit psyched out almost by the Oura Ring and the other devices about my sleep. I said, now I feel a little bit of pressure to get to sleep, or pressure to sleep well, and just feel like ultimately it's going to go off how I'm feeling. And I go to sleep when I feel ready to go to sleep. And see, I'm waking up, and it didn't necessarily move the needle that much for me personally, just having all that data about my sleep. That's not interesting, and you can't garner some benefit from it, but just some pieces of it it's all, like I say, individual, what you like, what you find value in. But as I'm thinking about it, I'll just mention a couple of the machines that I had. ARP waves. They're basically just a really strong DC electrical current that's run through your body. And there are a lot of uses for it. I mean, even the functional neurologists, we had one protocol called the neurological reset, where you hook it up at the bottom of your feet and then onto your neck, and it just sort of connects everything head to toe. And there are a lot of neurological uses for it. But I found a lot of value just to use it for working out. You put it on, say, your biceps, you do some curls. I mean, you're gonna get a deeper contraction than you ever thought possible, and it creates some extreme soreness. Some guys almost got a little bit of a joy out of just seeing guys that were so sore after doing, especially legs, glutes, and a lot of guys would enjoy that, just feel that feeling of, man, I just really got destroyed, and I can't even sit down. But the ARP waves had a couple of those, had a couple of PMF machines. When you look across the board, like I said, the money invested here was so high, and that was part of the big stress too, obviously, because you got so much money into it, and something happens, and things do happen ultimately, that just added to the overall stress of it. But let's just get, I think I've mentioned about all other things, such as infrared sauna, hyperbaric chamber, as I mentioned a little bit, but the Proteus machine, that's another machine, sort of just a functional workout machine that was really a lot of fun. You can do a lot of interesting things with it, and it's just a good sort of adjunct to maybe a little bit to the ARX, as I mentioned. You want to get something that's a bit more novel, that creates more of a challenge for your brain to coordinate, and rather than just doing all these machine movements that take that element away from you. This sort of adds in that element, does the Proteus machine. But I think that's maybe all the machines I wanted to mention initially. Those were the big ones, really. And so I'm getting to the end here. I kind of want to boil it down. Was it a fad? I think in a lot of cases, yes, you could say it was a fad. Definitely, I think that some of the shine's been taken off of. But I think throughout the fad, there were still a lot of things that were discovered that I think ultimately are going to maybe lead to some better advancements. I think a couple of machines, like I said, I find value with that PMF machine. I found a lot of value in that InBody 770 just as a measurement device, especially with the phase angle measurement. I think that's really unique, really useful, a lot of utility in that. And of course, cold cryotherapy, there is a response there, a physiological response that should be positive on the whole. And you can of course I do still love doing ice baths. In a lot of ways, I prefer the ice bath to going into a machine like that. Mine was an electrical
Duggar's going for 5 minutes. Trying to go for 5.
Yes, it was more natural wall, so that made it really cool. It was all electric and just heated up the air, cooled the air to such a low level that it was really, really cold and reached the sort of temps that a nicer machine would. But I think a lot of those temps are a little bit misleading. But yeah, there's value in that. I think you can get value in that, especially I like to do it before a workout. I always feel like you're going to get this big noradrenaline, this epinephrine surge that doesn't attenuate, that you can continue to get it every time you get in there and get I think an even better workout before the workout doing the cold. And like I said, the red light bed, that's kind of more difficult to quantify. I think each person views it differently. You don't really necessarily feel anything, but as again I said, being out in the sun, I think you're getting every bit of wavelength you need, your body needs. It's sort of engineered. There's no flicker in the sun. You're not getting any flicker in that outdoor light. Those diodes they use in those red light beds, yeah, there's flicker, and you can see it. You can see it at times. So yeah, it's always a good idea to stay away from any flicker. So let the flicker go. But yeah, and then the Carol bikes, I thought about those. Those are really helpful. I think it's a HIIT workout. You get 2 sprints basically, and I think you're done in 9 minutes. You just do 2 sprints, and it gives you that quantification every time. Can you get up to a level that you haven't reached before? But yeah, and then the Shockwave, yeah, I think on the Shockwave device, I think did see some really good results from it. I think it's
drive it up.
There is some utility there. Some little off-label uses there. I don't know if it's still off-label now, but they used to use it for erectile dysfunction.
That's coming
towards some guys that would use it for that. We did use it. They would. I won't get into that too much, but they would use it for that, and they didn't necessarily feel like it was exerting that much of an additional benefit. But in terms of injuries, I did see a lot of good. There was a rugby team in town. In fact, they would send all the rugby guys in, the professional rugby team, and there's a lot of good feedback, a lot of positives from it, but at the same time, there are also, again, as person to person, people that, and I can say just from my own usage, I found a lot of value, like I said, in the PMF, enjoyed the cold, but not necessarily enjoyed the red light, but didn't necessarily feel like they changed my life to any degree, and enjoyed the ARX machine, didn't necessarily feel like it. I think I did get some strength gains. The arc wave, I really enjoyed the arc wave. I think I did got some muscle gains from it, but as I said, it was difficult to sort of quantify for myself because I'm so stressed. But the other machine I didn't bring up, I failed to bring up. I'm just remembering the Synaptech, but functional neurologists obviously use that a lot. It's just a lot about, as you can see here, you're going through different drills to try to connect your brain, your reaction time. It can do a lot of different things to measure your brain performance, and they give you different tools.
And here's a breakdown that the Synaptech would give you that was so useful, really, because it would give you a lot of different measurements: depth perception, near far quickness, contrast sensitivity, perception span, of course, go, no go. It'd give you reaction time, of course, visual clarity, target capture. And you use this, you're wearing glasses the entire time. As you can see, we're wearing glasses while you're doing many of these tests when you stand further away from the screen and you're not doing actually on screen, let's say with the go, no go test. But it was amazing to see just how someone could advance. And it was so helpful because you can compare yourselves to other players, individuals within the same category. Let's say we had a couple of San Diego Padre players that came in. They'd compare themselves at their position with other major leagues, say a catcher. How well is he seeing? What can he improve versus other catchers at his same level, at the pro level? Or if you're a skateboarder, you're a pro skateboarder, how well am I doing in terms of reaction time versus other pro, or you can do it at an intermediate level. So really helpful. And it was amazing to see a lot of these Padres players, just their vision was so advanced, so incredible. One guy had 28 vision, so he could see basically a normal person seeing what they would see at 20 feet, called 20/20 vision. But for him, it would look as if it were 8 feet away. So it's 28 vision. So it's really fascinating to see that. And you could see why these guys are so excellent as hitters, as baseball players. And I think I even heard, I don't know if it's true, but a hawk has 21.5 or 22 vision. So they're seeing at 2 feet or 1.5 feet what we would see at 20 feet away, or 20 feet away seems that close to them. It's at 2 feet. So pretty incredible, but it's a great piece of equipment overall. And a lot of Padres players, they got a lot of help with the ARP waves as well. Sometimes they would sort of be at their wits' end with some of the recovery and rehab, even done at a professional baseball team. They come in and use some of the different equipment he had, but a lot of ARP wave help. Like we had one guy trying to get ready for the postseason, and he was just stuck, and we got him there. He was able to go into the postseason and pitch.
Go, no go.
So this is just another great example of something that was really helpful to people.
Here's his brother. Here's his dad, the legend.
No. Get out of here. Washed up, rusty old single.
No.
Yeah.
They'll let him tell you different.
No.
As you can see, this thing moves fast. Great test of peripheral vision, reaction time, perception span.
And guys could actively work on these things, and we could construct different protocols and programs to help these specific, and we get the feedback. We go back and test after, let's say, a block of 8, go back and test again and see a lot of great improvement. And that'd give them a lot of encouragement and a lot of drive to go ahead and keep going through the program and keep improving their brain performance. And brain performance oftentimes is difficult to quantify as well, but when you see it broken out and see it measured and see the differences, you start to some degree, you start to internalize those differences, and they start to show up in your performance, you believe. That's really the bottom line, is how well we're helping guys perform better, how well we're helping guys get on a better track. And I did have a number of more so women than men that really came in in just absolutely horrendous shape, or maybe they'd been, a couple of women had been in an accident, another woman had been hit by a car.
Explain what's happening.
I can.
Like, what is this thing about my face?
Right. This is a Nano V, and it's giving her structured water vapor that she's breathing in right now. She can breathe it in through this, or a cannula that'll go up her nose.
Okay.
Yeah. She's all right with what it is now.
Oh, but you can see me bouncing, right?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
You can see it. Oh, yeah.
Shaking.
And she's getting pulse with the electromagnetic field. This is called a pulse center PEMF. And the energy is finding where she needs the energy right now. So right now,
it's all in my back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which she's surprised.
Especially my right side.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did back and biceps this morning.
Yeah.
So I feel like because those muscles are like very much turned on. So
Right.
will like it eventually stop bouncing, like when you're.
Yeah, it will. We'll wait and see when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That interests me so much.
Another woman, it's really crazy. She was hit on a bike by a golf ball. She was right near a golf course, and a golf ball just hit her on the head. Wasn't wearing a helmet, knocked her off the bike. And so really bad shape, and a lot of Lyme disease going around, and there were a lot of ladies with Lyme disease. It seemed like it was much more women than men that had that issue, but it was probably 60% women that came in. Now I think about it, in a lot of cases. And to me, a lot of times women, they're a little more proactive about their health in a lot of cases. Men can sort of look the other way and just sort of grit their teeth and bear it, but women are a bit more active in that regard. But yeah, I saw a lot of cases where women, there was one woman, she couldn't even walk when she came in, and her daughter had to help her get around, and ended up she was doing everything she wanted to do again. She was going to the beach, swimming, she was playing sports, she was doing everything she had done at a much younger age. So that was one of the most rewarding things to see. I'd really missed that part of it, but getting back to that, him hawing around with this with this ultimate answer, but was it a fad? Yes. Are there vestiges of the fad that will withstand the test of time? I think so. In another form, I believe so. So, fad, yes, I would say so. But I think there was that was learned, that was gleaned from the whole biohacking period, I would say. And not that it's not still going on, people aren't biohacking or calling it a different name or health maxing, whatever you want to identify it as. But yeah, I think I think in the end it's a fad, but it's going to endure aspects of it. And I get back to what I said earlier. Using something in isolation, something that's being mimicked from nature in isolation, I don't think is ultimately going to be the way that things are really going to progress a lot forward. I think that we're going to have to find better ways to look deeper, find better research to find out that what other cofactors, other variables enhance something that's isolated. If that makes sense. I think it does. But that's where I stand. That's where I end up after 5+ years running a biohacking clinic and running myself to death. I think that's where I've come out. It's a fad, but in the end, I think it's going to be a useful experiment that's still running, that we're still working with. So hope that answers some questions. Hope that gives you some insight. If you have any questions you want to ask me, or go to the website, HealthMaxAbroad.com, and you can find some. We're putting up a whole course over there. We're putting up a number of different course offerings. I think they're going to be 5 or 6 modules that I'm working on right now. But the first module is going to come out here just in a couple of days. But all about different aspects of biohacking, different aspects of anything to do with health maxing, nutrition, environment, light, whatever you want to look at, sleep, anything you want to talk about, it's going to be covered. So look out for that. I say go to the website, HealthMaxAbroad.com, and say contact, make some comments here. Follow HealthMaxAbroad, please. Helps out a great deal. And we're going to have some follow-ups to this where I'm going to go into more detail. I'm going to do one here and upcoming soon. I'm going to do a short on phase angle. It's going to drive some of this maybe home even further for you. I know it's kind of a different concept, but we'll see you soon in the next one. It's going to be a different sort of topic, but we'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Getting some world-class recovery thanks to Fitness Genome. It's going to keep me doing what I love. I'm breathing in some water vapor. I'm getting electrically charged here on this bed. It's beautiful. Going to get the whole gamut today. Red light therapy, hyperbaric chamber. Just trying to keep these wheels from falling off. Thanks a lot, Fitness Genome.
All right. Ready?
Ready. This is Matt.
Alright, I'm Matt Swilley. I'm with the Padres. I've had a shoulder issue for a while and nothing seemed to help, so I decided to come in here, and it's been helping me out a lot, so you'll continue to find me in here.
Great. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.
Okay.